So, today I thought I'll talk about one of the requests that came in the WhatsApp group about compassion. So, I'll first read out the message or the question, and then I will talk to that. So, Dania says, I'd love to understand more about compassion. Example, an arahant no longer has desire, 9 things an arahant can't do. But she or he still desires all beings to be happy, well, and free from suffering, and still has movement of mind to help others. I'd like to notice which movements of mind are compassion. Compassion in the path, and if we should cultivate it in action, and perhaps including compassion directing towards oneself as well. So, first of all, I want to clarify a few things here. So, the word he or she desires all beings to be is what gets it very confusing, because usually when we say desire, desire has a negative connotation, right? It is related to craving in normal sense, wanting, and these kinds of stuff. So it is wanting things. It is in the unwholesome kind of roots. But the idea is arahants have wholesome intention, right? Intentions are there. Arahants haven't transcended intentions. They have intention, right? They have intentions that are wholesome. So, first of all, to clarify, it's that word that gets us confused sometimes. We can say it's a wholesome desire or an wholesome intention. So, when you use the word intention, that makes more sense. They have movement of the mind. They're not like dead logs. Arahants can talk, arahants can move, arahants give beautiful Dhamma talks. Their mind moves only when they are in deep meditation, of course. For anybody, not only an arahant in deep meditations, the mind can become quite still and even stop at arahant sanya vedita nirodha samapatti state. But outside of that, intentions are there. That's why the Buddha says, today I would go to such and such a village to offer a teaching, or I will go to such and such a place for alms, or will ask, could you please, Venerable Ananda, bring me my bowl and a robe, things like that. So intentions, speech, all of those things are there. And in fact, an arahant is only completely driven by intentions of compassion. If there is no compassion and that intentions of compassion, actually, after attaining arahanthood, they would pass away because there is no reason to continue. Plus, also, if they're not a monastic, they don't have their requisites and they can't really go begging for food. They don't really have any more intentions and desires to go to work, earn money, do the cooking, store up food. Those things become impossible for them. So household life and living at home becomes very difficult for them. So that is why if they were a lay person, they say pass away, they will give up their life force. And for somebody who's a monastic, of course, the monastic setting offers the four requisites, so they can be looked after. So the only thing that keeps them going is their intention of compassion, because they see the incredible suffering that surrounds them. So this is that the Buddha's Maha Karuna, like the great compassion of the Buddha. Even if you take for a moment, I don't know, this is a story that I have said here before, but it comes very relevant again. So I will mention just, at that time of COVID, when, there was so much difficulty for people. At the time when I was sort of visualizing myself as a bird flying through the suburbs and seeing through like, the houses, the things that was going on, like just that, just to see, but even just to bring up that idea, even now, in the world everywhere, what is going on, not the extreme forms of difficulty, but this just simple, simple forms of just having to deal with life. For people, but also for animals and also for all the beings in the lower realms. So when we know that, so the Buddha, or when people become arahants, this is a knowledge that they get, they see this, right? So when they see that arouse, my goodness, I want to help, I want to support. And we also can relate to this, right? A lot of us, a lot of people who I see in the audience, I know all of you to be like volunteering to come and help and support these things, to spread the Dhamma, to do, offer services, to do retreats, all these things. Why? Because you too can see the benefit of this Dhamma and how it can heal people, heal the beings. And then you too also want to do whatever within your capacity. And all of that is hopefully and generally driven by that compassion, wanting to alleviate suffering to even one being, let alone many more, right? So this is this feeling. So arahants are completely driven by this intention of compassion. That's what keeps them going, even when even if they may be sick, or why they get better and they continue on and they continue to teach, even with any form, is to any being, any even one being. If they can help, they can offer this beautiful teaching, this right view. They see it as a benefit, giving medicine. Like this is like that. So this is important to understand. And this idea of compassion comes in two words. There are more words, but two main words. So whenever we say compassion, the first word that comes to our heart is karuna. So karuṇā is the direct word for compassion. And karuna is a meditative state. So we have to be very careful about it, understanding how karuna is done. But the active form, how we do what we do out of compassion, this is called anukampā. Right? So this is the compassion is in action is called anukampā. So you can see throughout the canon, if you want to do a word search for anukampā and see how much you can see. So always, all the monastics, all the arahants, the Buddha himself, do everything. And even people ask, please, out of compassion for us, come to our house for dana. Out of compassion to us, accept this. Out of compassion to us, please teach. Out of compassion to this sick person, please go and visit them. Offer them some instruction. So always, this idea of anukampā comes, anukampang upadaya. Even when we ordain as monastics, this is how we ask for the robes. Out of compassion, please give these ochre robes to us so that we can live this holy life. Anukampang upadaya is how we say this. So it's really beautiful idea. It's out of compassion. This whole path, the whole spiritual journey for everybody is the driving force. Ideally has to be compassion, and it is compassion. Compassion as in both karuna but also anukampā. Anukampā is the more active form that we do. So when we do acts of kindness, it is called anukampā. So this is also really nice to reflect and understand. You can also search the suttas to see karuna, how that comes up. And karuna is always as Brahmavihara. So it's a meditation. Ideally, all the Brahmavihara meditations are done after samadhi, after deep meditation. That is when the spreading of these Brahmaviharas are easy, because there is no hindrances in our heart. Because when we have hindrances in our hearts, it's not that easy for it to spread evenly to all beings, because there are difficulties for us. So that is why the really proper spreading of Brahmaviharas happen at that time. But regardless of that, we can still find ways to build up compassion in our heart. And as we do that, we can also get into deep meditation and get into the forms of deep karuna. Spreading of that can happen quite easily, because what happens, as I was explaining in a previous talk as well, like when you actually see the suffering that is inherent in the world, if you do it with the right kind of attitude, with understanding, not with getting sucked into the sadness and going down like that, instead of that, you understand this is what happens. This is why the Buddha said birth is suffering. When we are born, suffering is inevitable because we have a body. So the body itself is difficult. This is the first noble truth, the Panchupadana Kanda Dukkha, the Buddha said. All this aggregates the whole body. So when we actually see that, what happens is the mind turns away. Yeah, the mind, when it sees, especially the sensual world, the difficulty, like the whole sensual world is very tiring. Think about it for a moment, how tiring it is to maintain a relationship, any form of relationship, to maintain a job, even to try and organize going an outing, a trip, even just to go to the cinema or out to dinner. All of these things, all of the sensual world, everything, even though we chase after it, thinking about the little gratification, the little bit of pleasure, it's quite a tiring thing. It's a form of suffering, right? It is a form of suffering. So when we actually see that properly at the time when as the mind becomes peaceful, because you're doing this at meditation, and hopefully you have done a bit of, breath meditation or body contemplation, or staying with the body, becoming peaceful, and then methodically just see gradually what is going on. The mind actually develops this perception of sabba loke anabhirata sanya, that is non-delight in the whole world, whole of existence. It's a beautiful kind of perception. Doesn't sound beautiful if you think about it, but it's actually beautiful when it happens, because your mind sort of then turn away from all these tiring things. As we said, the sensual world, the existence itself is very tiring. We don't even realize because we got used to the levels of tiredness and suffering. That's our normal baseline. But any one of you who had meditated, you know how it is when you turn away from the sensual world, when the mind is peaceful, how beautiful, how energetic that is, how non-tiring it is, opposite of tiredness. Yeah. So that is thing, and you can extrapolate that to understand what, the other side is like. So when that sabbaloke anabhirata sanya, or non-delight in the whole world, that when that perception happens, nibbida is inevitable. So when that perceptions gather a momentum, there comes a point your mind will turn. Yeah, your mind will turn and enter quite good deep meditation. So because you have been focusing on the suffering, the difficulty of the world, it is possible at that point to actually spread karuna, that compassion, in a big way, because the mind is now released and also it is free from hindrances and defilements. So you can actually find that way to go really spreading the Brahma Viharas. And karuna is an easy one that goes hand in hand with this non-delight in the whole world perception, goes together. And the experience you have actually is joy. States of joy is there as you spread karuna. That is your experience. So it's quite interesting to understand. So that is karuna, also in English translated as compassion. But compassion in action is outside of meditation, is when we actually do actual things like teach. The Buddha says, the highest form of compassion is teaching the Dhamma. Highest form of generosity is also teaching the Dhamma. So, and this is why the Buddha and all of his monks, were doing this teaching. There are many, many references. I don't know whether it's nice for me to just keep my eyes closed and go with the flow, or if you want references to various suttas. As I remember, I may say this. One of the suttas is Majjhima Nikaya 26, Arya Pariyesana Sutta, or it's also got a different name, Parisariya Sutta or something. If you read that, you will see how the Buddha got enlightened and what happened after his enlightenment. And, after his really big insight, and when he realized how profound that insight was, and when he got understanding of the dependent origination, all of that, he realized this is quite profound. And he was a bit doubtful whether, not doubtful, but he was wondering whether, whether there are beings who can understand and practice this in this world, because there's so much suffering in the world. But in brief, to say this in very brief, then Brahma Sahampati sees this mind state of the Buddha and comes down and invites and says there are people with little dust, meaning people who are able to see this Dhamma, understand this right view, and also have breakthrough into arahantship. So out of compassion for all of those beings who are with a little dust in their eyes, please teach this Dhamma that you have awakened to. So at that point, the Buddha actually used his Dibba Chakku, that is his divine eye, just to look into the world, and he did see. It is described in the sutta like the lotuses as different stages of blooming. Some are still under the water, some are just coming outside of the water, some are outside but not yet opened, but others are starting and various stages of being opened. So just like that, there are beings also at different stages of growth in wisdom and understanding, who are going to be able to understand or comprehend when they hear the teaching. So when he sees that, then he says that, yes, out of compassion, I will teach. And from that moment onwards, it was through compassion that he went and taught for 45 years. Yeah, really beautiful. Again, I have to remind my mom did a really beautiful website. I mean, it still goes a long way to develop it properly, but a lot of the beautiful information is there. And one of the unique things she's done is tracing the 45 years of the Buddha's life, like all the vasas where he spent, and information taken from the suttas, and quite moving, especially the last stages, the very last year, also very moving to see, all the things. So he was going really full power the last year to give as much as possible, even in his last year. Even his body was like a broken down cart, barely, strapped down with, bandages, just strapped down and kept together. He was still incredibly trying to deliver the Dhamma, and all of that was completely driven only by compassion. And also, if you want a reference for another thing that I'm going to say, this comes up in Digha Nikaya 14, where the Buddha actually tells, and not only this Buddha, it says also the previous 7 Buddhas, also that was their sort of way of doing things, and instruct all the monastics to also go and teach out of compassion, and even instruct, please do not go, 2 monastics do not go in the same road, right? So as to spread it as much as possible. So choose different roads, because those days there was no internet, no Zoom, so no very fast ways of spreading the Dhamma. The monastics had to walk by foot and only taught to whoever they met, and when there was gatherings and opportunities. So that's how they were spreading the Dhamma. So out of compassion, the Buddha asked the monastics too to go, walk, meet people, and share these beautiful teachings to heal, all the beings. So there's so many occasions how this is there. And beautiful Dhammapada stories as well. They are not early Buddhist things, but still, you can see really nice stories of the Buddha seeing the world and going out to help purely by compassion. So this is kind of really, really beautiful reflection to understand. And we can also see how in our life, how beneficial this compassion is, even for us as monastics and for everybody who's on the path. It's a very beautiful force to do things rather than coming from a sense of ego, sense of self wants to do things. It's much better if it is compassion. So here there is also a little bit of warning because sometimes these things can get mixed up. So sometimes we can get carried away out of compassion. We could do things and we can start doing too much. In the sense, it's never too much, but in the sense, if we haven't finished our job, if we are not fully enlightened that, then if we set aside our own practice and just really go only doing things and get too busy, that too isn't that great. And also we have to see why we are doing, because sometimes there is a really big danger, especially for monastics. This comes again and again in the suttas. The Buddha talks about this, and this is the danger of labha, satkara, sammana, siloka, gain, praise, honor and gain, praise, honor and fame, or something like this. So you get the general idea: becoming popular, getting lots of gifts, having lots of disciples, supporters, all of those things. And if somebody is not, have right view and has, got into some stages of enlightenment, it is very difficult. If the defilements get stronger, they get under these powers of gain, praise, fame, honor. They can be very enticing. So, and you can see sometimes good monastics get lost into these things and go in the wrong direction. So we have to be very careful, and that is where we also need to understand why we do things and how we do things. So sometimes is it to become popular? These days again, very easy because there's Instagram and all kinds of ways to very quickly becoming popular, right? So why do we do it? Is it out of compassion to reach out to as many people as possible, spread the Dhamma? Is that where you're coming from? Or is it because you somehow got into this, idea of ego coming in and wanting to be popular? So these are dangers. Sometimes it comes in the disguise of, I'm doing this out of compassion. All of these things, I write books out of compassion, I give talks out of compassion. So all of these things are out of compassion, but we have to be very careful and understand and keep clearing our heart to be careful. And if we catch ourselves, then it is time to stop, have a break, and reset, because this is really dangerous otherwise. So this is where compassion can go wrong, because it's no longer compassion at that time. Compassion actually doesn't go wrong, but compassion, if we forget and if the ego comes in, so compassion has to always go with wisdom. So when the wisdom is there, when the right view is there, no problem. But it is when the wisdom is not there, and when the defilements are stronger, when the hindrances are stronger, that is when the danger is. So that is when, if monastics or anybody who is, doing these things, if they're get really, really busy. If they get really busy and not have enough time to meditate, to calm down the hindrances and things like that, if they're still not finished with their work, in the sense not fully an arahant, then there is danger. So we have to be very careful. So we have to balance out our service with meditation. Otherwise, we can go into that direction. And of course, compassion has to always come with wisdom. And if compassion comes with stupidity, that is actually very dangerous, because we then don't know what is the right thing to do, right? What is the right way to be kind? What is truly helpful? So this is where wisdom is really, really important. And sometimes we could do something that seems like kind in the short term, but very, very dangerous and harmful in the long term. So in that occasion, we have to have that wisdom to somehow, it is okay even the person has to be in a bit of pain or difficulty in the short term, but it is for the long term benefit. So these things are very hard sometimes for us to see. And if our heart has defilements, it's really hard to do. This is also like when we love somebody, when we have so much affection, even for our child, right? We don't want our child to be in pain and difficulty, and they want something and they're crying, and we know, it is going to make them happy now, but it's going to be harmful for them in the long term. So you don't want to give it to them, but it is painful. So sometimes if we have so much affection, we can forget. It's like this. So it's really difficult, this one. So even when we have this kind of decisions to do, it is important that we meditate, make our heart cool, let the hindrances to go down, have a bit more clarity before we act on these things. So then we can be able to act in a kind way, even though if it is difficult, we be able to say, even if you have to say no to something in a way that is least painful and most beneficial. So, this is how it is. It's tough, it's difficult. So we have to be careful. And it really requires a lot of wisdom. Even I'm going to say not something that requires great wisdom, just to give an example, this I have mentioned also before, is that let's say your best friend, really somebody who you really care, is going through a difficult time. Maybe not your best friend, because best friend you might know how to deal with them because you know them for a long time. Maybe somebody else, like another person who you care, who's a friend, and they're going through difficulty, and you want to help. But how many times have you tried to help and got into trouble? Because you don't know sometimes, right? Our intention is good. We want to try, but it sometimes becomes very counter, even backfire. Sometimes people come and say, with all my good intentions for their benefit, I tried to do that, and they got really upset, and they even became no longer my friend. This also can happen. So this is the thing, right? So not to worry too much if your intention was good, but this is why to be really compassionate, to be kind, has to have a lot of wisdom, even at that degree, right? Even to know whether somebody is having a difficult time, giving them a hot chocolate is the right thing, or giving them a hug is the right thing, or leaving them alone is the right thing, or whatever it is, there's so many things, and it's hard sometimes. So we had to take time. Sometimes we just have no other choice but to learn from our mistakes, try a few things out. But of course, that is just very practical things. But when it comes to Dhamma, of course, there is much more clarity on understanding what is in accordance with the Dhamma. It's quite nice. We can always ask the question to reflect it. If if it was the Buddha, what would the Buddha do? Or what would Ajahn Brahm do? Something like this. We can think for a moment and see what would Ajahn Brahm do? Because he's somebody who's living, who we know, or any other, person that you have a lot of confidence in, who's supposed to be a wise, kind being. Say, how would they react? How would they respond? Or according to the Dhamma, how would the Buddha do? And then we can maybe have, and we can still get it wrong, but that's okay. So it's a process of learning, understanding, reflecting on the Dhamma. So even using compassion, you can already grow a lot in insights and in the Dhamma. Because, as long as you're motivated from compassion, it's nothing really wrong in the sense it's not unwholesome. Mistakes can happen, but you came from a good place and you can make amends, learn, and grow. So this is just that anukampā in operation. This is in our day-to-day life and also to oneself. What is the most compassionate thing to do, right? And we need to think about this. And this is where my every day, every Dhamma talk, no Dhamma talk end without me mentioning things. And this is caring for oneself, right? This is so important. And this is that anukampā, right? This is so important because very many people, we forget ourselves. We sacrifice ourselves to go and help out others. But that is not really very helpful because there is so much this body and mind can do also without care. And when that starts to fall apart or loses its strength or loses in the even the hindrances starts to come back up, then it becomes quite dangerous and you cannot provide high quality care anymore as well. So it is really important. So if we are a carer, if there are others dependent on us, then it is really important that we also spend time to take care of ourselves. And this is not an act of being like selfish or anything, because I know, there are, moms, there are dads who have little children, but they could be going through difficulties. Midlife sometimes can be hard, sicknesses, whether it's menopause for women. All of these things are there, right? And it is not right for us to just push through these things and go through. We need to know when to take a break, when to put some time to take care of ourselves. These are acts of compassion directed in the right way, because it is not directed in a selfish way. It is for our benefit and benefit of the others. This is the idea of sila. Where is sila coming from? Sila is grounded in compassion, right? This is what in the Ambalattika Rahulovada Sutta the Buddha talks about and gives instructions to his 7-year-old son. He says, before you open your mouth and say a word to another, reflect and see, is this going to be harmful for myself or harmful for other or harmful for both? If it is not, then go ahead and do. So that itself shows it's coming from a place of compassion. So our actions by speech or even by body or even the way we think has to come from a place of compassion and harmlessness. Both they are related as well. So harmlessness or non-cruelty is also related to compassion. So these things are really beautiful to reflect, to understand how we operate, how these things are related, and how these things empower our path. Yeah, because when we operate from a heart of compassion, from a place of kindness, it brings with it incredible amounts of energy. Yeah, just reflect for a moment a time that you have done thing coming from your ego, your sense of self, wanting to do things. It comes also from a sense of controlling, you know what is best, and it's quite a different feeling. And also reflect at a time when you truly came from a place of compassion, kindness, wanting to find out what's the best way to help. How is the best way to do this? What can I do? And whenever you come from a place of compassion, you always check. You get, uh, in tune with the other person, attuned to the needs of the other. Find out, how can I help you? What is helpful? You ask and then also investigate. I mean, they might say something what they say is helpful, but it is harmful. Of course, in those occasions, you know how to act again in a kind way, caring way. So even taking that as a way of your practice is really, really beautiful. And I remember some years ago, I did a retreat with Ajahn Brahmali, and the theme for that retreat was the 37 factors for enlightenment, the Bodhipakya Dhamma. So the whole retreat was quite intense, going through all these 37 factors, right? So on the last day, the going home kind of talk, the last talk of the retreat, he said, well, if you can't remember any of those, don't worry. Don't have to try and remember and practice all 37. It's good if you can do it, but if it is too much, don't worry. I'll tell you one thing to do. If you can do one thing properly, all 37 will also grow eventually. And he said, see whether you can be kind. Remember to be kind. Yeah, compassion, anukampā. So if you can always come and train your heart to incline to compassion, always see how can I do this in a way that is not harmful for myself, harmful for other, and in a kind and caring, gentle way. Then it's beautiful, right? Everything else is going to grow on top of that. So quite beautiful way to guide ourselves. Yeah, guide to understand, is my action going to be correct? This is the question, right? People ask when they have to make a decision. What should I do? What's the next step? Where should I go? How should I do? What should I do? So all of these things, it is important. So reflect and see where is it coming and how does it feel after you do, and then learn. Yeah, this is a beautiful way. This also comes up in the Sakapanya Sutta, which is Digha Nikaya 21, where the Buddha says, in your pursuit of happiness, see whether the wholesome states are growing or unwholesome states are growing. So compassion is a wholesome state. So if you see compassion coming up, or your motivation is coming from compassion, then whatever action you are doing by body, speech, and mind is highly likely to be on the right track. So compassion is a very, very powerful force at all levels. And it is also in the right intention, in the Noble Eightfold Path. That is where non-harm is there, avyapada, and also non-cruelty, avihingsa. Both of those are related to compassion. Metta as well, but largely to compassion, because non-harm and non-cruelty. So they are right there in the second factor of the Noble Eightfold Path as well. So, and this is what right view does. With the right view, when we see the suffering of myself, suffering of others, the right Dhamma response in our heart is compassion. And this is where we spoke about even in the past, when we have difficult situation or difficult people in our life, then this is happening. Instead of getting angry, instead of getting upset with what they're doing, how they're doing, whatever harm they're doing, instead trying to understand why they are doing it, understanding, not in detail, but understanding that they are conditioned. Right view tells us they are conditioned by their past to do these things, and they probably don't have mindfulness to pick up, make good choices, make wise choices, which is why they're doing stupid things that are harmful, which is why we are getting upset. So when we see that, and also understand the other factor of the right view, the karma, the workings of, your intentional actions have consequences. When we remember that, then we realize this person who's doing these difficult things, at the end of the day, they have to bear the consequences, yet they don't even understand fully. If they fully understood that, they won't be doing this. They're doing that because they don't fully understand the full extent of their action and the consequences. And they have not enough mindfulness to even realize what they're doing. They're in the darkness. They're like without eyes. They're like a crazy person at that time. Yet, there is no excuse when it comes to karma. The karma, they will have to reap those consequences. So when we see that, again, compassion is our response, right? It is the compassion that then springs up in our heart in place of irritation, no? Anger even. So this is really beautiful again, how compassion comes into the practice in a very big way, very beautiful way. And another place that we have mentioned before is that Removing Resentment Sutta, which is in Numerical Discourses, Book 5. I can't remember the sutta number. It might be 157 or something. And there the Buddha also says, this is the fourth kind of person, the really difficult person who does things that are bad by body, speech, and mind. Yeah, these are very rare people. They're not very common in the world. But there can be these kinds of people at times. If you see such a person, and the Buddha's simile is to say, to reflect and think about this person as somebody who is gravely ill, walking on a highway on a hot day, and the two cities are on either side are too far away, and this person is not going to get any medicine, water, or any help, but going to die just by the side of the road, quite a painful death. And if you think like that, it's immediately compassion comes up. So this is the idea when we see even really difficult people, like, even terrorist leaders or any kind of, people who do so much harm. Again, still there is possibility to arouse. It is not accepting what they're doing, of course not, and it's not taking action to stop their harmful behaviors. We definitely have to do that, but in our heart, bringing up compassion and wishing them well, wishing them may they be free from suffering, may right view come to them, may they be get in touch with right view, may they be able to understand this beautiful Dhamma one day and be free from all of these harmful behaviors and things like that. So compassion, there's so much that we can say, and the benefits, and it is really at the end of the day is towards our own heart. Yeah, compassion, just also like metta, is very powerful force. At the end of the day, all of these Brahma Viharas are developed not to heal the world, that's like a byproduct, but heal our own heart all the way to enlightenment. And this comes up in this really, really beautiful sutta called Metta Sahagatena Sutta, and this is in Connected Discourses, Samyutta Nikaya, Bojjhanga Samyutta, chapter 46, sutta number 54. I think I have done this sutta some time ago, long time ago, either on a Thursday night or during the Karaniya Metta Sutta, or both. And in that sutta, there is this really beautiful idea, like the people who are practicing, who are not Buddhists at the time of the Buddha, were asking some of the monks when they got together, we also practice compassion, you guys also practice compassion, so what's the difference between us? Right? Because one group is Buddhist, the others are non-Buddhist, but we are all practicing. And this is similar, right? So in the world, all the religions have compassion. Everybody practice compassion. So what is the difference here? And the Buddha says, when somebody asks this question, when it was for metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha, for all the Brahma Viharas, because they all practice all four. So in this talk, I'll mention about the compassion. And the Buddha says, if they ask counter questions, four questions. The four questions in Pali: Kim Gatika, Kim Parama, Kim Pala, Kim Pariyosana. Ask, what is the leader? What is the way? What is the way that you practice this? What is the leader? What is its fruit? And what is its final destination? Ask these four questions, and that is where the difference is. In the Buddha's dispensation, where is the compassion leading to? Right? In this occasion, I'll talk with compassion. It applies to all four Brahma Viharas. And the Buddha says the compassion is to be developed in such a way that the seven bojjhangas, the seven factors for enlightenment, are developed in your heart. So what does that mean? So this is heading towards enlightenment, cooling of our heart, eradication of our defilements, right? Eradication of craving, ending of craving. And what is the leader for compassion? For compassion, it is the space is the thing. For metta, it was the sign of beauty, but for this, it is the idea of space, infinite space. Is the leader. And the fruit is still, again, the ability to perceive. You become a master of perception. You can perceive what is repulsive as non-repulsive, what is non-repulsive as repulsive, and you can vice versa, or as both. So it's an incredible ability that you get as a fruit. And final destination is full enlightenment in this life. But if you fall short, then you will get reborn in the Brahma realms, and then from there we'll get fully enlightened. So not a small thing. Compassion is an incredibly beautiful thing. And looking through the lens of compassion, you can see how it cools our heart. Easier to see, right? Because to arouse compassion, you can't arouse compassion if you have enemies, right? If you have frictions, it's hard. So you have to understand. So just seeing the suffering and difficulty, even in our enemies, so-called enemies, if we have difficult people, or even not personal enemies, but difficult people in the world, whoever who they are, when we can arouse, in just like we discussed before, compassion for them, then our heart is really open. There is nobody that we cannot send compassion to, because we see the degrees of suffering inherent in existence in all realms, so to speak. All the realms, just the existence itself. Even the Deva realms, for them, their time when it comes to an end, they have to be born again. They say they have like almost they faint when they realize. In the sutras, they say the Devas have this garland of flowers, and how they know that they are going to pass away is those flowers starts to fade. When the flower starts to fade, they get a shock. They faint. Oh no, I'm going to pass away. So their good time comes to an end, and then we don't know. The next karma will take them to another destination that's probably not as great, maybe. So therefore, we can see even for them, because they're still in samsara, whoever who is in samsara, we can have compassion, because, we have to keep going. And this darkness, if you see sometimes the stupidity of our minds, right? Even we are practicing, how stupid we can be, and things that we do, and how when the defilements get strong, how they drive us, and we become slaves of our defilements, and how difficult that is. And when we see all of that, it really, compassion is the right response for us, right? It is the really right response for us. I have printed out incredible number of suttas for references, but I never got into any one of them. But I think no need. I think I have convinced or answered the question, hopefully full enough. And I will stop here and invite any questions, comments, feedbacks. Anyone? No one? Not, I'll read out a nice verse. From the Yaka Samhita, the scary one, right? Yakas are the demons or scary beings, but I'm going to read out. So some of the yakas were pretty wise, right? This yaka called Manibadda. So this is from Connected Discourses, uh, chapter 10 called Yaka Samyutta. There's a whole chapter dedicated to all these yakas or the demons. And this one is Manibadda. So he says this to the Buddha. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling among the Magadhans at the Manimekala shrine, the haunt of the Yaka Manibadda. Then the Yaka Manibadda approached the Blessed One, and in the Blessed One's presence recited this verse. It is always good for the mindful one. The mindful one thrives in happiness. It is better each day for the mindful one, and he is free from enmity. Then the Buddha replies, right? So he's pretty smart, right? The Yaka is talking about mindfulness and being happy and saying, yeah, mindful. Do you agree? Because we also say, right? Mindfulness is it. Everybody is a mindful, you know, the whole world is into mindfulness. And it says that if you're mindful, that's all you need. That's not that far from what the Yaka Manibadda was telling as well, what the present world is telling. But let's hear what the Buddha said, right? The Blessed One says this. It is always good for the mindful one. The mindful one thrives in happiness. It is better each day for the mindful one. So far, the Buddha is agreeing. So he says that, yes, he agreed with those things, but he is not free from enmity. Yeah, he's not free from enmity. So mindfulness alone isn't enough to get over enmity. That's what the Buddha is saying here. So the second verse the Buddha says is, one whose mind all day and night takes delight in harmlessness, who has loving kindness for all beings. For him, there is enmity with none. Quite beautiful, right? So to overcome enmity, which is a problem like hatred, greed, hatred, and delusion. So one of the main unwholesome roots of defilements is to overcome through harmlessness and metta. So ahimsa and metta. So ahimsa is closely connected to compassion. So compassion is necessary. Compassion and loving kindness are both necessary. So just mindfulness itself isn't enough to get fully enlightened. Quite nice to know. So compassion is pretty important. So if anybody thinks, oh, no need of these namby-pamby soft things like Brahma Viharas, all this love, compassion, rejoicing, just be mindful and I'll get enlightened. Well, the Buddha says otherwise. So you can think about that as well. So, no questions? Everybody's happy and in agreement? Or this one in the chat, what do they say? Okay. Is anukampā sympathy? No, anukampā is also compassion. Yeah, compassion in action. Yeah, compassion is action. Just look how it is come. Out of compassion, accept this. Out of compassion. So, not sympathy, it is compassion. It really is, kindness out of, I don't think it's sympathy. It's still translated as compassion. But anukampā is when it is given all the time as an action. But karuna is when it is spreading like a mind state of the wish, the radiation of that wish is karuna. So karuna always is a meditative state, a Brahma Vihara, and anukampā is its action. Yeah. Okay, Eugene says, what was that sutta with the yaka? Okay, 10.4, SN 10.4. So in Anguttara Nikaya 2, Sutta 150, the Buddha says, because there are these two kinds of compassion. What two? Compassion shown with material goods and compassion shown with Dhamma. These are the two kinds of compassion. For these two kinds of compassion, compassion shown with Dhamma is foremost. So that's a reference there to show that teaching, giving, offering Dhamma is higher than just material things. In Majjhima Nikaya, MN 137, the Buddha says, here, bhikkhus, compassionate and seeking their welfare, the teacher teaches the Dhamma to the disciples out of compassion. This is for your welfare. This is for your happiness. So this was always what was driving the teaching of the Buddha and the Arahants. And in Anguttara Nikaya Sorry, there are questions. Okay. BE says, how does compassion help one to overcome the 5 defilements? Yes, okay. Very good. Not 5 defilements, 5 hindrances. Yeah, they're called nivarana. Well, kind of, I compared this before with metta. Let's see, I haven't done it with compassion, but being a Brahma Vihara, it should be the case, right? Let's see how it works. So imagine if your heart is filled with compassion. For a moment, just bring that thing, just seeing beings, in states of difficulty, states of suffering, and understanding your own predicament and own state of affairs, just having a body, the difficulties of our mind and body, day-to-day life, even, or even in our spiritual practice, all of these things, when we see the suffering inherent, when we have that idea, is it possible to really run after sensuality? Is it possible? Because if your heart has compassion, I also mentioned, when the compassion is there, what you feel is joy. Your heart is full of joy, but you see the suffering. So it's kind of counterintuitive. This kind of, you have to experience this to believe this, because you see suffering, it makes sense, but at the same time, because the mind is one pointed and has nibbida, it has joy, it is impossible to run after the sensual world. When beings are suffering, we run after sensual world, because if we don't know the Dhamma, the Buddha says the only thing that the worldlings know when they are suffering is to go towards the sensuality. But when we have compassion, that means we have wisdom, we have understanding of what is going on. So when our heart is actually filled with compassion, compassion is actually a higher form than metta also. So it is actually really fulfilled, full energized. So then I can't see how the mind will go into sensuality. So that's the first hindrance, right? The second hindrance is ill will and negativity. So if you also have compassion, that was a way of overcoming, like I said right before, understanding the difficult people and why they're doing stuff and their consequences. There is no possibility to bring up negativity or anger. So I can see, how when the compassion is there, the ill. That hindrance will be taken care of. And what do you think? Whether we will have sleepiness, lethargy, and sloth and torpor when we have compassion in our heart, or will we be energized? I think we will be motivated, right? We have seen the suffering in the world, and we are wishing myself and other beings to be free from suffering. So, so we would be more energetic, right? So it is opposite of sloth and torpor as well. Will the mind be restless? The energetic mind is unlikely to be restless either. Doubt cannot come also because you can see there is wisdom there. But the thing is, when compassion is in its full form, the hindrances are already down. That's the thing. So you start spreading a compassion when the hindrances are already down. So sometimes you can use just the form of may all beings be well, or may all beings be free from suffering, or just healing for the world, or something simple like that. And the mind can actually get one pointed on that intention, that manasikara. And that itself can bring the mind together, and the hindrances can go down that way as well. And of course, when the compassion comes to your heart, the hindrances are gone as well. I don't know. That's my just current reflection here and now. Try and see. Michael says, Dear Ayya, I heard that the Buddha practiced karuna meditation very often daily. Okay. Yes, that's what I don't know the sutta reference. Apparently, when the Buddha in the last hour of the night or the morning, as the end of his last meditation, before he rises, he actually uses divine eye and sort of look and see this and spread karuna. Yeah, in the Angulimala Sutta, my mother says it's there, and there may be in other places, but yeah, I think it is possible that he did that and spread compassion to the whole world.